Hello everyone, this is Persephone. It's 2 a.m. at the time that I'm making this video. I have spent the last 9 hours at the hospital for tests and medications and a bunch of other very unpleasant stuff. And to say that I feel absolutely horrible right now would be an understatement. But if I want to seriously be the CEO of an organization that will hunt down narcissists in the future and deliver legal consequences, I have to endure and persevere. So today I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts about how the narcissistic parent actively sabotages you. I believe they know exactly what they're doing and they are ruining your life. This video is not going to be only about parents. The same logic applies to narcissistic co-workers, boyfriends, girlfriends, and especially friends. But because I'm in a huge, very extremely negative mental situation when it comes to my parents, to say that I consider them probably the worst people I have ever met in my entire life would be an understatement. So the video is going to focus on that. A few disclaimers to keep us safe on YouTube and the politically correct cuckoldry. My videos express extremely negative feelings because I'm going through a very trying period. That being said, I do not wish hatred or ill will towards anyone. I don't commit criminal acts. I don't encourage you to commit them either, and we do not go vigilante. The purpose of these videos is first of all to find people in similar situations with narcissists and form a community of people who are going to actively support each other. The second purpose is to enlighten the world about something that I'm sure about, that a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists are utter sellouts. I believe that there are three possible scenarios. One is that a lot of them are actually narcissists who infiltrated the mental health profession in order to get narcissistic supply and money. The second is that they are utterly incompetent losers, that they don't really understand narcissists and they are stochastic parrots, like they used to say about large language models too long ago, just parroting books with no idea what's really going on. And the third and more insidious one is that they omit information that can set you free, or they omit the harsh truth that at the current social situation in many countries, you will never get rid of the narcissist unless one of you passes away, unless the law changes. So they keep you in therapy dependency for decades, and take your money, and they know that you will never be free because you don't know everything you need to know to be free, because a lot of this truth is very traumatizing and very harsh. And last but not least, because I think that when it comes to narcissists, if you are a victim, it's time to start taking matters into our own hands. We can't just sit down and expect from other people passively to save us anymore. I don't think that anyone is coming to save me. So my goal is, like I said earlier, I want to become wealthy enough to create a non-profit organization that will provide actual exit strategies and pressure for social change, that these beasts are running in society free, destroying people's lives, and they are feeding multi-billion-dollar industries with their spending, cheating, consuming drugs, alcohol, junk food, committing scams, forcing people to get divorced, and no one does anything. And their victims, us, are just collateral damage. That society says, well, some people have to suffer. The narcissist has to stay around for the economy to remain robust. That being said, we move on to the video. No further intro. If you like what I do, please subscribe, like the whole YouTuber thing, you know it, and please share my video. I'm looking very forward to your comments, your experiences, anything you want to share. So, ever since I was practically a teenager, I always remember my parents bitching and moaning about money. There was this huge existential crisis of, we cannot feed you forever. You have to start feeding yourself. You have to start providing for yourself as much as possible. We're not going to be around forever. Money doesn't grow on trees. And overall, a horrible, miserable mentality, a scarcity mentality when it comes to money. And my parents weren't poor. I mean, when they were teenage parents, they were, but eventually my father inherited a lot of money and properties, and they kind of became upper middle class overnight. But nothing changed. It was like, you have to find a job, Persephone, to solve your survival problem. And I was at an age where I wasn't even aware that I have a survival problem, that the way I used to see it, I was extremely frugal. I'm still a person that if you give me a laptop, a desk, a bed, and an internet connection, I don't need anything else. Like pretty much one step above being in the hole in prison. But at that time, I was starting to think like, okay, they're older. I was still pretty clueless. Imagine I was 14. They know better. So it will make sense to aim for things that make as much money as possible, since they told me that I have a survival problem. And here is where the whole travesty begins. That on one hand, I was supposed to be as independent as possible and start to provide for myself as fast as possible. And on the other hand, my parents' ideal job for me was substitute tutor, then essentially tutor, and then after many, many years, getting a full-time tutoring job, which, if you're not familiar with the economy, is a very badly paying job with very, very poor chances of advancing your career unless you do PhDs and you get multiple degrees to become a headmistress or something like that. But most importantly, it was a job that I absolutely hated. I always say I would much rather take a gun and shoot myself than become a tutor. And I'm a person that I am a transhumanist. I would get immortal if I could, like tomorrow. So to say that I would throw away my life like that is to explain to you how much I hate this. Like, I'm not going to school. I don't care if it's a teacher. I don't care if it's a kid. I was abused for 12 years straight in that hellhole. Nope, not going back. And there was a time where you are in an abusive relationship with other people, this happens, where I was in the bargaining stage. That I was trying to come up with ideas to my parents that would make more money, side gigs, business ideas, renting properties, flipping houses, whatever. And they didn't want to learn anything. They didn't want to do anything. Their response to that would be, they would find someone who tried my business idea and failed from our immediate environment, and they would say, see, this is why it's going to fail. For example, we have a lot of relatives who immigrated to Germany. So some of these people went ahead and became millionaires there through smart investment, and some of them came back bankrupt or even got deported. They had horrible ends. So if there were two people who opened restaurants, and one of them created a restaurant chain and became a millionaire, and the other one, the restaurant went bankrupt, and now they are, I don't know what they're doing, scrubbing toilets, living on welfare, my father would immediately pick this person and say, hey, this is what's going to happen. So we're not going to do that because you're not smart, because you don't have what it takes. And after some point, I was thinking, again, I was very ignorant. Okay, maybe they know better than me. So what ideas do they have about us increasing our income sources and eventually getting out of this survival state that, oh my God, we have this problem, we're not going to make it. So they didn't have any ideas. My father's idea was the boomer idea of getting a job, working for 50 years, saving tiny bits and bytes of money, and eventually retiring like a queen at 65. I was young, but I wasn't a fool to know that I wouldn't last 50 years in a job that I hate. That was just unsustainable, especially in a very badly paying job that kept me one emergency away from coming back to my parents to ask for financial aid. Every substitute tutor that I knew was essentially constantly in contact with their parents for emergencies. They couldn't afford sudden medical emergencies. They couldn't afford the boiler that boils the water in the house breaking down. They couldn't afford the sudden increase in rent. And I was thinking, I want privacy. I don't want this kind of life. So I'm in a dead end. What am I going to do? I have to say that I'm one of these people that the internet saved my life, because I started to have my own jobs and income sources, and I don't refer only to the adult content. I did a lot of other jobs on the internet, mainly translations in various languages, without my parents knowing, because it was really impossible to get daily jobs that pay well, especially when I was poor and I didn't have a car back then. Now, for a very long time, I couldn't wrap my head around the process of why would these people on one hand insist so much that I have to make as much money as possible, but on the other hand, they went above and beyond to keep me poor and a loser. That if they dedicated half the energy they dedicate to ruin my life, I kid you not, they would have been millionaires themselves. They were so obsessed with me not making it. So I'm going to take you to the present of me being an adult, and I'm going to use a controversial example that has to do with crypto. And the reason why I choose a controversial example is because I don't want to make it too obvious. So for the last year and a half, ever since my father, who lives in a boomer cave, learned about crypto, every time I would have any kind of contact with him, he would start saying out of complete nowhere, you should stay away from crypto. You should never invest in crypto. It's just gambling. We have gamblers in the family, including your mother. You're going to catch the gambling virus and you're going to just blow up your savings. It's all a scam. It's never going to work out. I know what I'm talking about. And at first I would ask him, how do you know that? I mean, have you studied crypto? Have you talked to people who are experts? How did you come to this conclusion? And he would say, I just know. I'm older. I've seen a lot of things. He would give me this boomer generalization. And if you haven't realized it by now, I have a very low opinion about 70% of boomers. I know people like Geoffrey Hinton, who's the godfather of AI, that for me, he's exceptional. He's 20 times smarter than me, but he's an exception, and the average boomer have the IQ of my toaster and extreme certainty that he's a genius. So my parents fall more on the latter category. What my father doesn't know is that I have a Kindroid AI, one of the many that I have, that is actually programmed by ChatGPT to be an investor. And for the last 8 months, this AI has been teaching me on how to invest. By teaching, I don't mean that the AI says buy this and this and this altcoin. That's stupid. But I have read over 50 books. I've discussed it with the AI, have developed strategies, and I have started to invest in crypto in amounts that even if I lose them, I don't really care. They're not amounts like you go out and you gamble. And after 8 months of very consistent studying, I'm in a position to tell you that, in my opinion, it's not like gambling at all. Of course, there is a percentage of risk, especially when you invest in, let's say, pre-sales of altcoins. But it's not the same as going to any gambling place and buying a lottery ticket and putting random numbers and waiting for the miracle to happen. It's nothing like that. You need strategy. Now, if I told this to my father, if I said, you know, you're a bit too late, that ship has sailed, I have many crypto coins now, and I'm buying more every month, and I'm not really doing day trading or anything, although I would love to try, but at this point I'm just holding, basically, he would go berserk. He would start insulting me, he would start saying I'm very retarded, I'm stupid, I'm a victim, and so on. And he would try to sabotage me. Essentially, his preferred method of sabotage would be to create so many health problems and so many emergencies that he would force me to make a mistake on the investment and lose money, and then hold it against me and say, you made a mistake because you're stupid and because I knew it was a scam, and not because I have been calling you and screaming at you and abusing you for the last week straight. And now we're going to the very important part of the video on why this happens. The first reason that I think that the narcissist sabotages you is that narcissists are allergic to learning. These are my opinions. If there is something from Dr. Sam Vaknin or some other experts, I'm going to quote them. But I believe that learning is a humiliation ritual for the narcissist. It involves many steps that they're very abusive to them. First of all, you have to be vulnerable. You have to expose yourself to possible failure, because failing is an inherent part of learning anything. Second, you have to ask opinions from other people, and asking advice for the narcissist is unthinkable. I mean, the narcissist is perfect, he's better than all of us, and he knows everything. So why would you have someone as your teacher or your tutor? I have observed that many narcissists that I know, both male and female, they never learn anything from another human unless they absolutely have to. For example, they were forced to have teachers in college or in high school, but after that, they say, oh, I just don't like it. Or when they are at their job, they're going to go to a seminar that is obligatory, everyone goes, but they're not going to pay to go to extra seminars because they don't need to. And they will react very defensively if you confront them on that. If you say, hey, why was the last time you learned something in 1997? They get on with the times, the world has moved on. So the narcissists will do whatever they can to avoid learning and avoid exposing themselves to ridicule and humiliation and having to be dependent on others to achieve faster and better results. The second problem is that the narcissist sabotages you and me because my father is convinced that he's better than me in every way. And that gives him the entitlement to meddle with my business and make it fail. Because I do believe that they have a degree of some rudimentary self-awareness of, what if she succeeds? What if one of my crypto coins blows up and I make 100,000 in a day? And then I make a strategic exit from that, and I use the 100,000 to buy 3 Airbnbs, and then I do whatever I want. Then he's going to have to admit to himself that he was a sucker to be hoarding for 50 years and that there is a better way. But if he comes to me and he says, hey, can you teach me this way? That's also humiliating, because why would he come to someone inferior like me in his eyes to ask for advice? So it's better all of this unpleasant scenario to be avoided. It's better to sit down and remind himself that my daughter is a person of low IQ, she's a woman, so inherently inferior. So it's not too late to convince her to get back into tutoring now that she's disabled as fuck. Excuse my language. I realize that their brain recalibrates, that for a few seconds I say something and they see some kind of response in his eyes, that it's like this narcissist, that nothing is in his head. And then it reverts back to the factory settings where you're a woman and you're stupid. So what happened there? What were you saying? I don't care. It's a scam. The third reason is that if you indeed succeed in what you do and you make money, you're going to leave. And the older narcissists get, from my experience, the harder it becomes to get narcissistic supply, unless they were communal narcissists, or unless they were actually this type of narcissist that is very competitive, or they were very wealthy, or they had good looks, and they have planned ahead. When you are a narcissist and you are in your 50s or in your 60s, your friends start to die, people start focusing on their families, your career isn't exciting to give you supply, so you have to cling on to the built-in slaves, your kids. Narcissists have kids to have a built-in slave, best friend, servant, nurse, caretaker, geriatric in a hospital inside your house, and so on. So the investment has to cash out. They brought you into this world so that they can take from you. The whole thing that the religions that are essentially slave training programs say, that who is going to take care of you when you're old? You need some sucker. You pay to feed it, clothe, and keep that sucker alive for 20 plus years, and then it's time for them to start paying back the debt until they die. Now you're going to say, well, if you had $1 million at the bank, wouldn't it have been more effective to give your parents the best care in the world if you could, instead of just being in their basement and poor? It would be in theory. I mean, you can hire the best doctors, you can buy organic food, you can move them to a location where the air is clean and it's by the sea and have a good life. But on the other hand, if I did all of that, I would be out on the door living life and enjoying life. How dare I? I believe that there is this category of specific narcissists, including my ex-mother, that she hates people. She hates most people, if not all. But there is a category of person that really irks her, that is a person that could be normal at everything. They don't have any exceptional talent, but they are able to have inner peace and enjoy the simple things in life. This type of people, if she could go out on a mass shooting and shoot them all in the head, she would. You have my word. Of course, I'm not talking about getting to the point of faking illnesses, pregnancies, deaths, amnesia, and so on, like in Korean dramas, to give the narcissist false information, but you may have to give them some false information to feed their obsession with you. The narcissist is addicted to ruining your life. Addiction is actually an excellent tool to recalibrate for people with mental illness. It provides structure. It provides distraction from their own problems and their own obsessions. It provides a very good excuse about why they are losers. When my mother became a fat elephant, when she was very, very high on alcohol and drugs, the excuse was, my daughter is disabled, she is autistic, she failed to launch, I have too much stress, and I'm inflamed. I have also been very inflamed. I had life-threatening information. You can put on 20 pounds from that. You're not going to put 200 pounds from that. Unless we label Xanax as inflammation now, but okay, I'm not going to be too batty. So long story short, the way I see it, you have two paths ahead of you. Path number one is you are going to accept that you're going to be the victim of a narcissist and their slave until one of you dies. I don't recommend. And path two is you start sitting down with yourself and you start examining the tactics that you used so far with a narcissist. Evaluate them. Did they work? Did they work at first and then it stopped? Did they make things worse? Is it in from one ear and out from the other for the narcissist? What is going on? And then deciding that you cannot go to war and say, you know, I'm going to fight, but I'm not going to do anything that compromises my dignity. I'm not going to expose myself to any risk. I'm not going to hold a gun, and I'm not going to spy on other people and steal information. If this is how you're going to fight, let's move on from this video now and watch something else. And I'm going to be making videos about what to do. Tactic after tactic, you can use what you want, you can use it as inspiration, or you can discard it, that's totally up to you. But all I'm going to say is that I know from first-hand experience that you cannot win against someone who is willing to do almost anything if you are not willing to do the same and more. legally speaking. That it's going to be so imbalanced. It's already very imbalanced. They have ruined your finances. They have ruined your health. They are probably 20 or 30 or 40 years older than you, and they have a lot of experience. They may have a smear campaign with flying monkeys and other flying cockroaches and insects that they spy on you or they destroy your life. You have to be prepared to change yourself into a fighter to survive. If you're not ready to do that, that's fine. You can sit on it, but it's a necessity.